I'm back with some serious things to talk about here. It's 6:43 p.m. Eastern Time, Saturday, February 26, 22, here in New Jersey on the east coast of the U.S. Now I need to get right to the point. There's three main things I'm going to mention, and then I'll discuss them. Number one, watch Israel. I believe something major is about to take place there and might be going down at any time here. Number two, I have a video I think I'm going to put up, record it after this and put it up, which is a great explanation, an overall picture of everything relating to Russia, that whole region, Ukraine, the history of it, and what took place and why and how things have come to this point right now with this whole situation. It shows the whole history and development of events and things, again, in the whole area, in the whole Middle East, as it relates right up to this moment here and what's taking place. So I highly recommend to watch that video if you want to. All right, number three, this point leads into number two as far as trying to understand what is actually happening here, the reality of it, things we may not know, the history, again, and why things are the way they are right now and what could develop out of this. This relates to the last two videos that I put up before this. One I took down, one I left with Amir tsarfati. Now I left the one up that you see there. I put it back with the round table of two other persons with him, also giving an analysis, of the past and leading up and what's really this is all about and going on. So I put it back up because I think it still gives good information, understanding. But again, if you want to watch the next video I put up, then you really get an idea of what this is all about from A to Z. It's an Indian from India channel. The woman, it's a rapid pace and it's very professionally done, all kinds of imagery, and explains really everything of the past, again, leading up to all of this, what's going on really, what this all is about. Okay, I want to mention this again. I want to go over this quickly, but this relates to Amir tsarfati again, why I took that other video down, although it seemed like a good video. It was about the Rapture. Well, I'm not going to discuss much more about that except to say I just did a brief search about him. I've known about him for many years. I never watched him. There was something I just didn't, care. That's all I'm going to leave it there. And so I was hesitant about, I had mentioned him even in videos before that, where he did one video like moments before this actual invasion took place, and then he came back on the next day and he did another video and, gave more of a detail of what this is all about. But let me just say, I don't know, I'm not going to belabor this, but I came upon something where he seems to believe that Jesus is the Archangel Michael. Now, I'm not going to get into this. I just read it and whatever. I'm not going to take the time to sit there and try to figure out, maybe he just meant something else by it as symbolically. I have no idea. But for sure, it's a very commercialized ministry. I'm sorry, if you watch him and this offends you, but I have to speak what I feel. I don't know. I haven't looked into what he actually believes as far as grace goes, being saved by grace alone, which is the gospel. So you could use your own discernment. I'm not going to say anything more about it. I said what I had to say. And very important to conclude with the fact that if I show something or relate something from someone else or mention them or quote them, I don't necessarily, watch them, number one. Number two, I may or may not necessarily agree with them or support, them or their doctrine or what have you, because I just go by who preaches the gospel, the true gospel or not. If they don't, I run away. I really do, no matter who or what it is and what they claim. And I'll say it again, whether it has to do with false works doctrines and salvation, work salvation, or even grace, the so-called grace version of Gnosticism and a head, profession, or those who are into, evaluating, encoding through gematria or whatever, media or numbers or what amounts to astrology. There's a lot of that going around in the church. God doesn't want us to be involved in astrology in any way to try to pinpoint when Jesus is returning. No one knows when that's going to happen. I'm sorry. And all God means by that is to show, the calendar and times and so on, but not to be involved in anything astrological. And again, a lot of these channels and ministries, if you want to call it that are involved in all of that, they show a lot of this. It's like all satanic. It's all satanic symbols. And I know they're trying to, reveal the schemes of the enemy, the devil, and so on, because we're not unaware of his schemes and so on. I don't want to keep going into this. I don't want to make this too short. I want to get back to the main point, which is Israel right now. But I can't watch it. It's too dark. It's too ugly. Even though that, they say they're trying to show other believers what the enemy is up to. I don't need to know what the enemy is up to. I know what they're up to. I have known, and we all have known. And most of that encoding and symbology and trying to figure out the next move of the evil one, to me, it's all fruitless. Yes, we know, we know the signs, we see what's going on with the enemy, what's trying to be done, but we see the overall picture prophetically and what God has shown us through the signs as we await and to await Jesus based on that, including what's going on right now, and particularly that's being set off right this moment in the Middle East and the entire world, and I believe ready to engulf the whole planet. Yes, it's all staged, but it doesn't mean it's not real, and it doesn't mean that it's just, false, just pretentious, just theater, because the blood and bullets aren't pretentious. They're real, okay? Nuclear detonation is real, whether you want to say it's staged in a theater. And all the opinions and talk about, what's real, what's not, who's doing what, not, don't be deceived. We need to know, what's going on, not be taken in and all that. I don't care about that either, just like with the gematria and the symbology and the encoding and all of that stuff, because I care what God says, what the truth is, what prophecy is saying, and the point we're at, and the point, the purpose. And the main thing about all of this, which is to go against Israel and bring in the GOG, MAGOG war with that entire region. GOG, the leader of MAGOG, chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. And that's the whole region, not just Russia. But if you go back historically, it's like all those countries down here that are part of that. So to be the leader of that, a hook brought down, God is putting a hook in Gog's mouth with all these other countries to come against Israel. I believe that's about to happen, and God will destroy them, and finally, show His glory and that in His protection of Israel for His glory and purposes, not because any person or country or race is any more favored or special to God, but that it's been His purpose before time began to bring this about through the seed of Abraham and to bring the Messiah whom Israel rejected. And that's why it's called the time of Jacob's trouble. And then God's purpose and plan in that, and showing His judgment upon that, because it's really satanic behind the scenes. It's really the evil one trying to destroy Israel, destroy God's purposes. And then once Jesus returns with us and sets up the millennium, so it goes all the way through, and then to the end of the millennium, then there's another, it mentions Gog, Magog war, and Jesus annihilates them. They encircle the camp, and then that's it. History is over, and that's the plan in a nutshell. But, you could go back even before time began. This was God's plan. God had this all planned out. God knew everything about this right this moment, what's going to happen after this, all the way into the future. And it's because of his purposes, for the race, the lineage of Israel, that he's doing this. And the Bible says that when Jesus appears, and those of Israel will see him coming, with great glory, and they will weep like a woman weeps for their only begotten, child. I don't believe that just means it's a corporate thing, that all of Israel will be doing that, whether they believe or not, and suddenly, turn to God, as it's put, like an Old Testament kind of idea. But whoever is left standing there and has Jesus in them will know that he's the Son of God, and there he is. He came, and he is the Messiah after all of this time that Israel rejected. Or maybe the ones who aren't saved then will be mourning because they realize that, I don't know, I'm just speculating. They could be realizing the opposite, That's probably stretching the point, a stretch of the imagination, whatever takes place, and whoever's left, and whether they're, saved when Jesus returns or not. And that can only be by grace, and only by God's Spirit actually indwelling a person, Jesus indwelling a person, no matter when that happened, that was, is now, or in the future, up to there's no more man left, the end of history. So I may have lost many who were listening to this. Many may have shut this off already, and I meant to get to this point that I'm going to talk about really quickly here, the main focus and reason I'm doing this video relating to what's happening right now with Israel. So I'll pull this video shot up in a close-up, but I want you to see, the outlay of the Middle East here. Of course, we know Iran is to the right here, this large region. Iraq, whatever you want to call it. And then Syria. Let me pull it up now. Russia is up here. You can't see it. A little bit farther to the north. And, okay, so here we go. What's going on here? Well, you just saw Iran, where that country is located. Now we have Syria. This is the main focal point of everything right now. Of course, we have Israel right here in the brown. We have Jerusalem and the West Bank area in white. Of course, this is very strategic and important. What's going on? Lebanon and Damascus. The prophecy, concerning Damascus being, totally destroyed. What could provoke that? It would really have to be Israel doing that for strategic reasons and defense and self-protection from annihilation. So basically, me personally, I'm expecting something very major to happen. Really could be at any time, any moment here, with regard to Israel and Syria, like I just said, particularly this whole region here, Damascus and Lebanon, because of the infiltration and supplies and things going on behind the scenes right now with the support and aid and influence of Russia instigating this, along with very much so, just as much, Iran. So there was just a report that Putin it was announced in like an official government tweet or whatever, that Russia no longer, accepts Israel's, right to occupation and of the Golan Heights, which is right here, and basically they threatened Israel, over this issue, and also issued a decree several days ago, Putin, warning totally warning Israel not to do anything whatsoever in Syria. Okay, so if Israel feels it must at this moment carry out, a strategic strike into Syria, that would be considered by Russia right this moment as an act of war, and with Russia. And I think they're all provoking Israel right at this moment, and Israel knows it, but their hands are tied because they know they're going to have to take on Russia, he's not kidding about all this. Others may think, well, he's just bluffing. He is not. He's a madman. And he also warned NATO and the United States that if anyone gets involved in this, against Russia, meddles with Ukraine or supports others, that might be attacked or what have you. Putin said, to sum it up, that you will see something you've never seen before. So that seems totally like a nuclear threat, retaliation. And he also warns that if this escalates, that we'll see us all in heaven, all right? I don't know if that's the exact words, but that's pretty close to it. So that's a self-destructive statement, someone who totally doesn't care what happens and is actually has planned this for a long time, and it's coming to pass right now. This isn't just developing. It's all been laid out and plotted out, and what's happening is just the next step, one step after another in quick succession by them, by these other antagonistic and oppositional and hating countries, who the ultimate goal is to destroy Israel. So Russia is basically saying that anyone, bar none, who goes against what he's doing or interferes or causes a problem or tries to, retaliate, even with sanctions, this goes. And there's already been sanctions. So as far as that goes with him, that's it. That's the last straw with him. Anything goes now. He warned, even with sanctions, you're going to see something. You're all going to see something you've never seen before. And now it seems like NATO is building up forces and seemingly, on the defense in that area. So anything that sparks it off, there was just I guess it was an American cargo ship dealing with Ukraine, commerce, that ships from Ukraine and so on, that was hit. I guess it was yesterday. But surprise, you don't hear a darn thing about it. Also, bio lab facilities. There's was like 11 of them in Ukraine that are American, and from what I heard, like 7 of them were destroyed. But again, it's like the whole world's hands are seemingly tied, because they know if there's any retaliation or reaction, that's it. This would be total, I have to use the word, it could be a total annihilation, total nuclear exchange. And also, when the issue of supporting or not supporting a country such as the Ukraine, because of what's really going on there and behind the scenes and who's doing what and that we don't know about, well, there's people there, there's human beings, there's kids, there's women, there's children, there's people who have nothing to do with this. They just are trying to survive and exist, and they live there and they're alive, including believers, including Christians. So not to take some kind of smug, position or attitude or opinion with regard to anything here. Again, I'm concerned about, we all are human beings, all right? That's the first thing. And again, the next video that I put up, if you watch it, it goes into a lot of all those things, might answer a lot of questions and, curiosities and information to learn and to understand what this is all about. honestly, I only listened to half of it because it was such good information. So I don't know what the second half is about. I don't know what they're going to say after that, or I would support, or whatever. But that's all I'm telling you. Just, as history. So again, as history, as information. And my sense, this is very important too, living here in the U.S., I'm speaking of it from that perspective. I wouldn't doubt that there's, let's say, forces and let's say vessels, sea vessels, in the area of the United States, maybe close offshore here now. And like Putin said, you're going to see something you never saw before. So it's unthinkable and unheard of to anyone, Americans, that something like that could happen right on this soil. It could very, very likely be submarines right offshore. And there's been reports of that for a long, long time. That's already been happening right off our shores, spotted. I know it sounds like sensationalism. I don't think it is. I don't think it is at all. This is real time. This has been planned. This is just happening, just like a sequence of events, like a giant chess game, and also a very, very rapid, fast chess game, I think. And Putin, Russia, let's say Putin, he's the mastermind of all this, always seems to be one step ahead of the next move of whatever he anticipates might be the response, and issues in advance horrific threats and warnings of the consequences, even of very minor things, that anyone, any country, anything that tries to meddle in any way in what he's doing, including Israel, are going to suffer the consequences like we've never seen before. And from what was said, that Israel has to watch their toes here because they cannot win against a powerhouse like Russia. I'm not saying that in a bad way, but it was also said that Russia has a greater force than the whole of Europe, and basically that European armies. Again, I'm not saying this just what I heard, because it hasn't been wartime in so long, so it's basically like just armies, but not battle hardened or ready for such strong war. Though the U.S. is technologically advanced, maybe more than, I don't know, the most in the world. I have no idea as far as technology, but again, similarly, we in the United States have never seen anything like this. This country can be compared very much to very comfort-oriented and, I don't know, living the good life, whatever you want to call it. That's the way part or a lot of the world might view this country. But as of this moment, we're still a powerhouse, maybe, equal with whoever in the whole world. And if there's no one with the capabilities, with the resources and power to withstand Russia, even though it might be just a big game and everyone is in on it, then they could trample over everyone and everything. But again, that's most likely just part of the whole scheme that, everyone is in on it. So in concluding here, no one really knows, except the ones who do know, how much time may be left in the development of things here. But it's always been the idea like, don't listen to all this stuff. It's happened before. It keeps happening, over and over. They're more or less pretending nothing really major is going to come about. I wouldn't think that at all with what's happening here. This is different. This has actually been set off. I believe this is the real thing, the real deal, and it could happen very, very swiftly. All it takes is a spark, all it takes is a spark to create a fire. So there's a real quietness right now. I don't know exactly what's going on as far as listening to news reports go and all of that. Even though, of course, you have to take that to listen. Don't listen to everything, but sort it out in what you're hearing. But again, I think, you're hearing real things that are happening, not just pretend or speculating on things. especially prophetically. The Antichrist has to come in and bring peace, okay, which means that the opposite was occurring in order to introduce that peace treaty with Israel and the surrounding nations. So that would indicate exactly what's going on here now that precedes that. After the church is gone, after we're taken from here. And this is all being held back by God because we're still here. And once we're removed, then this can happen. So if it looks like it's this close, then it's very, very possible that the rapture is very, very, very close. I believe it is. Again, I came to believe almost 45 years ago by reading a Hal Lindsey book, and from the moment I read the part about the rapture, I was saved and believed, and just something happened there. I knew Jesus was real. The minute before that, I didn't know any of this. It was just revealed to me that he was real. He's coming back. That was the answer I was looking for. That's the truth. That's the reason to be alive, which I had no reason, felt like, as a teenager. And Jesus saved me in my very late teens. So what I'm trying to say is, historically, I've seen this over and over. I've seen this before. I've lived this. I've seen, all these flashpoints happen time after time after time. I don't believe one second this is just another one of those times. I believe this is the real thing. We're at that point. We're at it. This is it of what has been prophesied is coming to pass right this second before our eyes. And this could flare up at any time. And Israel's back is against the wall because they know what's going on here, and they know they have to protect themselves and at all costs. And if that means going against what Putin told them not to do, or that's it. That's the end. They're going to have to do that. They're going to have to protect themselves. They're going to have to defend, because Syria is the stomping grounds. That area right on their border, right there. And like the last domino to fall, the last refuge against total invasion and total destruction. So that's what's going on here. Of course, we don't hear militarily what's going on behind the scenes. That's why we don't really hear anything and might think, oh, nothing's really going on, very much. Things are pretty much okay. No, they're not. They're not at all. Whatever's going on behind the scenes, everyone is planning and knows what's happening and awaiting, anticipating, making the next move, making the next decision based on what might happen. So I look for a provocation. I look for something to happen with Syria. Who knows? Maybe first happening to Israel, and then Israel having to retaliate, and that would be it. I can't see how this is going to stand off or not going to happen, even imminently, with what everything that's happening here right now. That you really can't. Something has to give here. Something is about to, and if that happens, don't necessarily look for something to come in stages. Like, oh well, this happened, and maybe this will escalate to that, and that might lead to this, but right now it's okay. No, I don't think that at all. I think it's going to be one big shot, one big, boom that ultimately happens to set off everything. Though, you have to say that might not be. It might take more time or whatever is going to happen, but it might not. Jesus is going to return. He's going to come. He's going to appear. He's going to take us out of here at a moment when we don't think, when we think not. Like a thief, he's coming. So watch Syria. Watch Damascus. Watch Lebanon in relation to Israel. And I think everything is about to happen there. That's going to be, the focal point of all of this. Now, as far as some kind of cyber threat or cyber attack in this country, I did a video. Was it the last one or whatever? I don't know. No one knows really if that's actually going to happen or how severe. I had mentioned that if something became so severe that it knocked out everything somehow in this country for a long time, then yes, there could be a situation of total, governmental control, which is called martial law. But you know, it's uncertain, of course, if that is even going to happen or how soon or not, and to the extent that it might. But right from the military source that I showed on that video, he's saying, you know, don't be surprised if you see that happening, especially in Hawaii, with Hawaii, because of the military bases and implications and strategic location there, and also across the whole of the United States. So his tone wasn't like, oh, well, don't be too surprised. No, to me it seemed like he was telling the truth, like this is going to happen, like he knows. Again, you could say, well, maybe that's just being put out there and it's just to scare people. I don't know what, but neither does anyone else on the contrary. So that's my point. And yeah, it would be a nightmare scenario, as whoever said that, somebody high up who said that in a statement. It would be a nightmare scenario for this country and the whole world, because it's all, everything's connected, interconnected, also with the United States, in, you know, financially and other ways. Now, you know, if troops are baited out because of, you know, this happening, that happening, this region, that happening, because of opportunists, countries like China, you know, doing this and that, or Korea, and then, you know, having to strategically be defensive in those areas and taking troops out of this country. I don't want to say, you know, it's not hard to figure out what that could mean here. You know, like China just came out with a statement a day or so ago, making it seem like they're now sanctioning or, you know, opposing Russia for what's happening or what have you, making it seem like they're not together, but they are. That's just put out there. I believe they're both of one mind, and I think maybe, probably, likely, both Russia and China, and along with other countries, if there's an attack on this country, not only with weapons, but right on the soil, that it would involve all these countries. Then, of course, you'd have to have the UN step in and quote unquote keep the peace, you know, take control if the government suffers this and there's no continuity of government, so-called, and whatever. But we could just see what this is all about. And then Canada also, very hostile, same mindset, and all of these players in the grand puzzle, the grand scheme, the grand ruse to usher in the new world order and the rise immediately of the Antichrist to come in and seemingly create world peace and be the savior, the one who takes charge and leads humanity into a golden age, supposedly, and the Messiah, whom Israel will accept as their Messiah, whom they're waiting right this moment for that to take place and believe that will happen, and that this very situation here with Russia, GOG, the GOG-MAGOG war, is the trigger and thing that will immediately precede the appearance of their Messiah right after that takes place. So whether something happens between Israel and Iran, something happens between them here, that could spark it off also. Here's a quick map showing, it says Russian Empire, 1904. There's the region of Siberia. Then we have Russian Central Asia. And then we have the European Russia. So that's what composed it then. Here's another quick shot. Just want to show you this. You can see Soviet Union, Russia's right there. Turkey. There's Iran, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Damascus, Israel, Jordan. So there's that map. Here, this is a wider shot of things. You could see Russia. And also I wanted to show this shot here. of the upper regions. Of course, this is Russia right here between Russia and Finland. Now there's issues about Finland wanting to join NATO. So there's that going on. Belarus, really, Russia's in there. They were doing military exercises. I think that they haven't left, so they're basically in there. I don't know what's going on with these other countries here. Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, what their position is. And of course, here is Ukraine. Poland. Reports are that like 100,000 Ukrainians have headed west into Poland to escape for refuge. So now, and then there's also issues with Poland that Russia, I guess, has been warning about. And then Germany, I believe, is a part of NATO and part of the troops there. So if anything happens, you have this whole region that Russia's, not kidding around about that. Because the whole of NATO would suffer the wrath of this tyrant in whatever, however that happens. And don't forget, there's other nations involved that equally as strong, powerfully, thermonuclear, that would be involved, that have the capabilities, namely China, North Korea, etc., probably Iran, and other antagonistic countries toward the United States and Israel. So Putin is basically saying to the whole world, try to step over this line and you're going to see what happens to you all. That's what he said in so many words. Again, we'll see each other all in heaven. That's what he said, in paraphrasing it, if that's where he's expecting to go. There was also some statement, I didn't read it, I don't know exactly, where he quoted scripture or something, the Bible, maybe about this GOG and MAGOG issue. I'm not sure what that was about, but he probably, spoke against it. That almost sounds like Pharaoh of Egypt hardening his heart against God. When Moses, came against him, what the Lord said, Pharaoh just kept hardening his heart. So that's what's happening here. Okay, I hope you lasted this long to listen to this. I think it was important what I had to say. And again, if you want to listen to the next video, I might have even a few more in that line of thought, to give more details and history, understanding about what this is all about and all the past that led up to all of this. And finally, once more, if I mention a channel or a video or whatever, it's for informational purposes, and I most likely don't even agree with what they have to say, especially if they preach a false gospel. It's not of grace, no matter what they say, or they seem to be a Christian channel. There's a lot of them out there, whether it's actual ministries or it could be truther channels or survivalist, selling supplies and so on, or any other thing. I just say watch out. If they don't preach grace, it's a false gospel, no matter if it seems like they're Christian and everyone flocks to their channels and loves to listen to them. But again, it's information, and they, even if it's earthquakes or whatever, any topic, there's a lot that say they're Christians and appear to be, but either they don't preach the true gospel or you don't know it because they don't show it. They don't really tell you, but you assume that they do. So that's it for now. It's around 8 p.m. now this Saturday. Again, it's the 26th of February. And right here you could see, I think, watching for developments right here with Israel once more.